Hey guys, Rob Potter here with another little Photoshop tutorial for you guys today. Now in this Photoshop tutorial, what I wanted to do is show you guys how to create a vignette for your images using Adobe Photoshop. Now I'm going to show you not one but three different ways. I probably sound like a bit of a salesman there, but I'm going to show you three different ways of creating a vignette. Now you might be sitting back wondering two things. You might be wondering, where is this gorgeous location, and two, what is vignette? So let's answer the first one first. This is Grotto Point Lighthouse, and this is over at Bagola Heights in Sydney. It's a fantastic photography location. If you want to know more about it, to check it out, what I'll do is I'll put down below in the notes below, I'll put a link to the photography location review for this hotspot. Fantastic location, definitely worth heading out and checking it out for sunset. You may just have to take a friend though, because it can be a little bit tricky getting down the bottom here. Anyway, enough of that. Now, if you were wondering the second thing, which is what's a vignette? A vignette is basically a way of darkening the corners of your image to draw a person's eye, or the viewer's eye, into the center of your image, which is obviously where you want them. So to give you a bit of an example, this is before, and then if I click that layer and turn that back on, that's after. So it's nice and subtle, there's not too much to it, but it's just darkening the edges ever so slightly, again, to draw people's eyes into the center of your images, because what you're looking for is you're actually looking for the area that's better exposed. Your eyes just naturally gravitate to that area, so that's one of the reasons why we do a vignette. Now I'll do a vignette on any one of my images. They all get it. Doesn't matter when they were taken, where they were taken, how they were taken, they all get the vignette. So enough of that. Let me close that up, and here's a layer that I've just created without the vignette. Now I'm going to show you three different ways. The first one's really quite easy. The second one gets a little bit more elaborate. The third one's even more elaborate again, but it has a few benefits, obviously. So let me show you the very first one. Now, the very first one, you will have to have Adobe Photoshop CC or a plugin that allows you to use the Camera Raw feature inside of Adobe Photoshop. Now usually you only get this when you when you open up a raw image for the first time, but the great thing with Adobe Photoshop CC is they've now given it to us as a filter. So if I go filter and I go Camera Raw filter, the Camera Raw dialog box, or sorry, the menu appears, and then if I go to effects, and in my effects palette I've got the grain, but if I come down the bottom here, you can see I've got post-crop vignette. Now, very difficult, write this down, we grab that tab there and we drag it to the left. Okay, how simple is that? So really quite cool. Obviously we could apply as much as we want. I'm going to keep it fairly subtle. I might go about the 20 mark. Now I could go around and play with the midpoint roundness, feather and all those sorts of things, but for me that's a very simple vignette. So let's see if I can show you a before and after. So that's the sort of the before. So as you can see, before without the vignette in the corners there, and then the after. That's basically it. Now, if you're wondering, well, what happens if you go to the right? If you go to the right, it actually lightens it. So sort of, I don't know, it makes it like I'm going to say maybe like an old TV show style type of image. And I apologise for anybody who's out there going, hey, I used to like those sorts of shows. I've never ever gone to the right. I've always gone to the left to darken the corners. But I'll leave it up to you. If you have a need to lighten the edges of your images, there you go. So that's the very first way. Nice and easy. Obviously, once I'm happy with that, I would just go OK and apply that to my image and then move on. So that's the first way. Now, the second way is actually the way I do it for all my images. I think just over the years, this is the way that I've come to like to do my vignette. So basically what I do, come up into my toolbar there, the second one down, and then what I'm looking for is the elliptical marquee tool. And now what this does is this gives us a circle selection or an oval selection, depending on how you drag it out. So what I do is I click in the very corner, top left-hand corner, and go down, right down to the bottom right-hand corner. And what I'm trying to do is, obviously I want to try and keep that inside the image, so all the way around. Now, if you don't know too much about selections is a whole nother video, but if I was to now, let's just say, fill that with a color, it's going to fill the inside, which I don't want. I want it to fill the outside. So quite simply, I'm going to come up to select, and I'm going to go down to inverse. And what that'll now do is that now selects the outside of my image. But remember, I do want to darken it, so we're on the right track. I definitely want to darken the corners. But if I was to try and darken the corners now, I've got that very hard line, so it's not going to work. I need to soften that line somehow. And the way we do that is we come up to select and then down to modify, and then we go to feather. Now, what feather will do for us is it will soften those edges. So that way it makes that transition from one to the other really nice and seamless. Now, the most I can go is 600, so I'm going to go okay with that. I'm happy with a 600 pixel feathered radius, so I'm going to go okay. And you can see that that's now changed. And just for argument's sake, if I fill that with white again, you can see that now no more hard edge. Basically, it goes from solid white all the way through to the image, which is what I want. I just don't want it white. So what I'm actually going to do, rather than, you might think, well, okay, just fill it with black. Rather than do it that way, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a blend mode. So what I actually want to do first is I want to copy this selection, or copy the area that I've got selected onto a brand new layer. To do that, all I do is go Command J on the Mac or Control J on the PC. And as you can see, that's giving me a brand new layer. And you can see, hopefully you can just see in there, I've got some of the residue of the image below, but it's around the edges, which is what we want. And now all I do is I come up here to my blend modes. From normal, I'm going to change it to multiply. Now you can see that when I select that, automatically the edges darken. And you might be going, oh, it's a bit harsh, which it definitely is. I would 100% agree with you there. So from 100%, I'm going to drop it down to 20%. Okay, so and that's the opacity. So basically with the opacity, it just makes that layer a little bit more transparent. So 20% transparency, or down to 20%. And if I turn that on and off, there's a before and there's the after. Now, pretty much I'm confident in saying 95, maybe even 98% of my images, I always use a 20% opacity with the vignette, but there will be a few that need a bit more or need a bit less. As you're going about processing, you'll know, just sort of feel with it, fiddle with it, play around with the opacity, and you can increase the oomph, if you like, of that vignette, make it a lot more noticeable, or drag it down. Again, it'll just come up, it'll depend on the sort of style and look that you're going for and that you're happy with. So that's the way I do it. Quite like that way. The third and final, but definitely not the least, way that I'm going to show you is a little bit more elaborate, and it's using a tool that we've covered in a couple of Photoshop tutorials now, and one that you'll no doubt be aware if you watch those that I very much enjoy using, and that is levels. So with levels, I'm going to grab an adjustment layer. Now, we need to make sure that we're using a levels adjustment layer. I can't just go and create a solid, like a hard level that just gets applied to a layer. I need to make sure that it's a levels adjustment, which will become a little bit more apparent shortly. So there's my levels adjustment. Before I start playing around with the histogram and moving and modifying things and darkening things up, if I was to darken at the moment, it's going to darken the whole image, which we don't want. So I want to try and, again, just get those corners. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over to my paintbrush, make sure it's on black, make sure that paintbrush is fairly large and the hardness is all the way down to the 0. Again, if we have it down to the 0, that way we get that nice transition. And I'll just simply come in here and I'm just going to click once. I might make that a little bit bigger. So I'm just going to click once roughly in the center of my image, and you can see I've now got this great dirty big black circle. But it's sort of very nice and soft, as you can see there. And so with that now, remembering what we did before, now if I go and increase the amount of dark tones I've got in my image, so going left to right, you can see that all that's doing is that's just softening, or sorry, darkening the outside of the image. So if I was to really do that, you can see that's not affecting the inside, it's just affecting the outside. So obviously we don't need to do that too much. Let's even go 20 again, just so that I can sort of keep my eye on where that is. So there's before and there's the after. So that's pretty good. And this was originally the way I used to do it. Now this has a couple of big benefits. The very first one is, with that back on, I can increase, so I can make that bigger by just going Command or Control T for the transform. And I'll just zoom out a little bit. That was Command or Control minus. And then all I'm going to do is I'm going to, with my free transform selected, and that's actually selected on that layer mask, I can make that black spot bigger. So if I hold down the Shift and the Alt, click on one of the corners and start to drag out, what that's now doing is that's making that mask bigger, or stretching that mask. So that black area is now covering more of my image. So if I go OK to that and zoom back in, and now I'll turn that on and off. So that's, hopefully you can see that that's now only affecting, that's now, I'll start again. The vignette now isn't across as much of the image as it was before, because I've made that the hole in the mask a bit bigger. So it's revealing more of the image below, or more of that layer 9. Now, that's one of the benefits of doing it that way. The second benefit to doing it that way, and hopefully I explained that okay. But the second benefit that this has is that I can actually move that around. So you can see that if let's darken that up a little bit more, and you'll see that a little bit better. So what I can actually do now is I can actually start to drag that selection around. Now you do have to be careful. You can see that I'm getting some lines here because I'm really sort of moving it around. I could obviously fix that up. But what I can do is I can move that light source so that, let's say we just wanted it sort of on the lighthouse. So I'll position that about there. Now obviously that's a bit much, so I'll drag that back down. But now what that's doing is that's really sort of highlighting my subject, which is the lighthouse, and hopefully will draw people's eyes up and into it. So you can see that even in my layer mask here, that black dot is sort of up in the right-hand corner. So before and after. And that looks pretty good. I'd be pretty happy with that. So there's three ways of using levels. There's three ways of creating a vignette inside of Adobe Photoshop. There are so many different ways of using Adobe Photoshop, so you might actually have another way of using Adobe Photoshop to create a vignette. So if you do, please let me know down below in the comments section. Otherwise, stay tuned for more Photoshop tutorials. If you're liking these videos, make sure you hit subscribe. Jump over and check out Photography Hotspots for more photography locations in Australia, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Happy snapping, guys. Thanks very much. Bye.